guys both survived the excursion. You made it back. I'll hit you with this, Steve. Let's start with this. Did the scene, did the vibe, the excitement, all of that live up to the hype of a game at Autzen Stadium?
Oh, no doubt. And I want to point out, I'm still excursioning. I left Oregon and came to Phoenix for a week since there's no game this week and no basketball. And before we start one 50 or 60-hour week after another through April the 15th, I figured I needed to take a little mental health break, which, given the circumstances from Saturday, just coming to grips with things at this point. But yes, the scene was amazing. One of the best places to watch a game in all of college football is the Autzen Stadium there in Oregon. The view that we had from the south press box looking north into the mountains and everything off in the distance kind of remind you a little bit of Penn State and the Rose Bowl a little bit, but just fabulous. And, if you didn't care who won, that was one hell of a game. And if you liked Oregon, obviously you thought it was one of the greatest games ever played, probably. But Oregon announced its presence in the Big Ten Conference for sure, taking down one of the two big standard bearers, no doubt, in just their third game in the conference. So, yeah, it was a spectacle. They do it right. It was very loud. They were trying to set a Autzen Stadium decibel record. I don't know that they ever got there, but boy, oh boy, did they died trying. I'll say that.
Yeah, it was a standard bearer just because they won the first college football game and national championship. Okay, sorry, Tony.
I mean, it's not much more ridiculous than the stuff that Michigan claims from way back in the day, if we're being honest. But before we get to that whole thing, I thought it was the most sustained noise I've ever experienced at a game. Like, the game was never. It was always a one-score game, and the crowd was always in it. Even the Ohio State fans that were there, and there were quite a few Ohio State fans there trying to get loud on third downs, and it was an awesome environment. Press box was open, so like you could experience and hear all of it. You could go outside if you wanted, and you could go up on top of the press box and really get outside. Just fantastic venue in terms of the experience. That's what college football is all about. Good time. I would recommend it. Just be prepared for a lot of travel and any possible delays, but it's something I think you should experience at once. And I'm looking forward to being out at Washington next year and knocking these two out. And can't say enough for the game itself, the environment, the stakes, and even as we're talking about the stakes, what has actually changed? Nothing has really changed, but for all the people that have said the 12-team playoff is going to kill the regular season. Look at the regular season we've had. Look at the emotions that everybody has had during this regular season. Did you see any type of reaction as the game is going on that people were like, it doesn't matter? No, everybody is still as completely fired up as they've ever been. Just look at all the death threats on social media from Buckeye fans.
Speaking about Washington's very nice. I was there in 2007, I believe, with Ohio State, played at Washington and won in the Tressel era. It was Tressel versus Tyrone Willingham. And that was, a good game for Ohio State. It is a nice setting up there, but I do think Oregon gets the edge in terms of passion. Washington, maybe if they have one of their better teams, they'll be, similar. But, it's, again, very impressed with everything I saw out there and what it means. I mean, you could tell they are really into football at Oregon, and it was a great setting for a game. This game, as we kind of dive into it, to me, reminded me of several games where they've come up one or two plays short, like the Clemson game in 2019, the Georgia game in 2022 in the playoff, and the Michigan game last year where they had the ball at the 25-yard line, going in needing a touchdown. And obviously, I think he threw an interception there or whatever to kind of end the game. So, those three kind of stand out in my mind. And it also brought up the Michigan game from 2022, where Michigan pulled off something like 5 plays of 30 yards or longer, whatever that stat was. Well, I think this was probably as bad or worse. 6 plays of 20 yards or longer, and several of them 50 yards or longer, and nothing short of ridiculous showing by the Ohio State defense. A defense that you thought had clicked into place and obviously has not. And, you get into the big games. I think the offense is just fine. They put up almost 500 yards and 31 points. That should win you 99% of the games that you play, but didn't win them this one, obviously. And, that's not to say they weren't without mistakes. I mean, a fumbled snap, a slip for a sack on the last drive that cost them 30 valuable seconds. The indecision on the last play, certainly all those things. They fumbled the ball on their own 20-yard line and gave them 6 points. So there were a lot of issues, I think, on the offensive side, but you're going to have that in a, evenly matched game. The offense versus the Oregon offense versus the Ohio State defense was not an evenly matched game. And I don't think Ohio State gave Oregon the credit it deserved for the quality of the wide receivers that Oregon has. Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart and Trayshawn Holden, at least before he was ejected, and the tight end Terrence Ferguson. As Coop used to say back in the day, for any of you who listen, we tried to tell you, that those 4 guys were studs, and the quarterback is obviously a stud, Dylan Gabriel. And so, man, we can delve into a lot of the issues on that side of the ball as we go along, but those were the remembrances I had, those 3 tough losses, and certainly the one against Michigan, which wasn't a tough loss. It was a blowout with all those big plays, but, the offense kept Ohio State in this one at least.
Yeah, 8 plays of 25 yards or more. Ohio State hadn't given up a 30-yard pass all season, and they gave up 4 in this one. Steve, you said the defense hadn't clicked into place. I would argue that they were clicked into place, and that place was the first down marker. And then when the receivers ran past them, they had to unclick and run with them. They weren't expecting Dylan Gabriel to 1, throw deep, and 2, throw deep accurately, because he's not done it, at least on the right side of the field, all season long. And they went after it, and they connected very, very well, as well as he's done since maybe last year and maybe ever, frankly, because he's, watching him, I think it was maybe Boise State watching him earlier this season throwing deep, and he had open receivers and it wasn't connecting. And this one, he had open receivers because the defenders were fixated on the sticks on the first down line. And even the first deep pass that Denzel Burke gave up, if you watch that, Caleb Downs is sitting at the marker, and Tez Johnson gives him one move and runs right by him, and he could have been the guy that was open. There was another play where I think maybe later in the game, it's a 3rd down, maybe they failed and they end up missing a field goal. There's an open receiver running right down the sideline, or right down the field, and Dylan Gabriel threw to the wrong guy. I think Ohio State, the next time they play Oregon, and I do believe there will be a next time, they're going to have to respect the deep shots, which then maybe opens up all of the short stuff and the dinks and the dunks. But yeah, they were so fixated. To me, it just seemed like a defensive game plan that was like, we're going to force them to throw deep, and if they connect, so be it. They haven't been able to do it much this year, and they did it. And Ohio State still almost came away with the win. But there are versions of this game where Oregon could have won by 17. If that Will Kazmarek catch gets correctly called as an interception. If Oregon doesn't get stopped at the goal line, if Oregon makes their field goal, like there are versions of this game that Oregon wins outright and handily, and there are also versions of this game where Ohio State wins, 5 times, 6 times out of 10. So I'm looking forward to the rematch. The crowd was absolutely a factor. I need to go back and look at how many of those false starts were on drives that did not end up in points, because none of that helped. And I think there are 4 or 5 false starts by all different kinds of people. And so, Ohio State walks out with a loss. Fantastic game, a classic. But the bigger loss is Josh Simmons.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. That one hurts because, he had played great football at left tackle, I thought, all season long. And I thought the second half of last season, once he got his feet under him, he was pretty good. Um, so they put Zen Mahalski in for him, and it will remain to be seen whether that is the final verdict on that. I've seen some variations where they put Tegra Shabola out there at left tackle and let Austin Sierveld replace him at right guard and try and attack it that way. I'm not sure if Shabola is ready for that or not, and I'm sure they're trying out all combinations. Luke Montgomery is also a possibility in some regard for this if they want to use him as a tackle or as a guard to fill the spots. But they've at least got some depth and some guys who have played. So I am, optimistic that that they're going to be able to pull it together. The running in the second half without Josh Simmons, I can't say that one correlated to the other. Oregon maybe made some better adjustments, but they held Ohio State to like 20 yards rushing in the second half on like 15 attempts, something like that, whatever those exact numbers were, but it wasn't good. And that can't go on. Obviously, in the big games, you got to be able to run for 150 to 200 yards in the big games. And they weren't able to do that, at least prorated what they had in the second half. They were behind the down and distance marker quite a bit, and eventually they just gave up on it and threw on every down. We can question what they ended up doing on first down at the 28-yard line after the Abuka play, but it's kind of like what happened in the Georgia game 2 years ago, where they got quasi close to field goal range but didn't advance it any farther. And again, it was a little bit wonky because you only had one timeout and you were down to like, I don't know exactly, 20, 25 seconds. And you really, you probably did need another 5 yards to feel really, really good about it. And, there's some people that said, well, they should have run the ball there. Well, if it goes down in bounds, then you have to use your last timeout. And at that point, pretty much have to kick your field goal at that point. I think a pass, then a run, and a timeout may have been the best way to approach it. You didn't need, obviously, the pass interference penalty. You didn't need that. That was, and we can debate that one until the cows come home. To me, I think when you shove off and catch a ball right in front of the official, that's probably going to get called 8 times out of 10. So I would say that was an 80%er that, that you did it in front of God and everybody. It wasn't like, you just kind of, elbowed off of him and turned around and caught the ball. No, you took 2 hands, and people are like, oh, the DB initiated the contact. Well, the DB's got to do something to defend himself. Jeremiah Smith is running right at him. So, it's kind of like he headhunted the DB to push off on him. So, figure we got to get this 8 or 10 yards, and by God, I got to do whatever I got to do to get it. And freshman mistake, rookie mistake, ultimately. And that's you take the good with the bad. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so much we could talk about this game and every little turning point that, I think this is like the Clemson game in 2019 where people say, oh, the interception at the end or the interception that was called back, whatever, or the fumble recovery, whatever that was, a Sean Wade play, whatever all this was. There were probably 10 or 12 different turning point plays in this game that really cost them. You could say that he should have started chasing the 2 earlier. They scored a touchdown in the second quarter and kicked the extra point to make it a 6-point game. Do you maybe go for 2 there to get it out to a full 7? In the third quarter, you scored another touchdown, kicked the extra point, and got it to 6 again. Do you maybe go for 2 there to get it out to a full 7? And, of course, the score changes everything that everybody does from that moment of the game on. But, man, Oregon pulled this one out. That's about all you can say about it.
Let me say this about the pass interference. So I would agree. It was pass interference. There's no question about that. I don't think. Whether I heard people claiming he didn't fully extend his arms. What I always find, regardless of my rooting interest, unfortunate is when there is a call made that has to be called, but the infraction, the penalty was unnecessary. Jeremiah Smith, by shoving that defender, created just immense open space. Jeremiah Smith just running at him, shielding him, then breaking off that route is still wide open and catches that football, and they've got the ball at the 18-yard line. He just has that much of an advantage in that situation because of just any wide receiver having that advantage on that route against the DB. But then you take into consideration his size advantage and strength advantage over that DB, and he just runs that route and he's open and they complete the ball anyway.
Well, and I'm also wondering if you go back and watch every receiver in this game at the top of their route, is that the only time a receiver is pushed off in this game? I'm going to assume no. And what was it? The play before that when Jeremiah Smith is being held and grabbed, running down the field for a deep pass down inside the 5 or whatever. But I also don't think it helped Jeremiah Smith that this happened on the Oregon sideline where all of the coaches are right there yelling and all of the players are yelling. I'm with you. Like, you watch it and it sure looks like a shove off. It's just, that must have been the only time that happened in the game since it was called in, but I doubt that. There's a bunch to talk about. I was just going through one of the comments that had me wanting to bring something else up, but we'll eventually get to it. I just think the timing of that, clearly they didn't want to throw a penalty on the defensive pass interference right before that, and then that it's just devastating 15-yard penalty when you're already in field goal range, and then that creates all of the what ifs. You should have done this, you should have done that. I don't think they told Jeremiah Smith, okay, go interfere and cost us 15 yards, and then we'll deal with it then.